You're listening to Health Innovators, a podcast and video show about the leaders, influencers, and early adopters who are shaping the future of healthcare. I'm your host, Dr. Roxy Mooney. Welcome back, Health Innovators. On today's episode, I am excited to sit down with Steve Sapot, who is the Chief Commercial Officer for Perimeter Medical Imaging. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Roxy. I'm excited to be here. So again, my name is Steve Sapot. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for a company named Perimeter Medical Imaging AI. We're actually based out of Toronto with a US headquarters opening up in Dallas, Texas. What we do is we use a technology called optical coherence tomography. What that ultimately does is we are going and imaging breast tissue to try and save women from going back for a second surgery. 10 to 40% of women that go in for I should say lumpectomies or tissue sparing procedures that obviously want to save the majority of their breasts, they actually have to go back a lot of the times for a second surgery because the margins come back positive. And our goal of our technology is we would like to get it to a point where those patients only have to go in for one surgery. So we're pre-revenue. We're very excited to launch in the next upcoming months. But the majority of my background has always been in commercial leadership. Years ago, I was a sales rep in the field. So I kind of grew up in the field, and then I've come up through different sales, marketing, leadership roles. So I've got a lot of experience. I know what it's like. I always joke to carry a bag, to know what it's like to be in the field, but also on the other side of to be an executive and run a successful business and try and lift something off the ground. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Great introduction. So when you and I were talking earlier, one of the things that you had mentioned was that early on that you guys were much more of an engineering focused company, and that you're in kind of this process of shifting and being more customer focused. So explain to our audience what you mean by that, and why do you think this shift is so important?
Yeah, it's the most crucial part of where we are as an organization. It's also the most painful too. It's very hard. You know, there are different types of people that come into organizations in different stages of organization where you have a great idea. You're raising capital. You're trying to see, will this technology really work? And you get to that point where you've done the right things. Your funding's in place. You have obviously this technology. You've proven it with some early feasibility studies, wherever they may be. You've maybe got one or two submissions to the FDA, but you're fully ready to say, okay, how do we go out and now sell this thing to the market? Because a lot of the times everyone is an innovator, especially on the engineering side. You're like, this is the greatest technology ever. Go out and sell it. And you realize, well, we don't have a brand yet. We don't have a marketing plan. What is the pricing behind it? Do we have a sales team? It's very easy to add early, sometimes top line revenue, but if the customers fall out the backside of it, you don't win in the long term. So it's a huge shift to get there.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you guys are putting in place right now to help with that shift and that transition?
Yeah. So when I came into the organization, a big role for me was to come in and say, okay, we believe we have a fantastic technology. We know that we can help these women, obviously, or men sometimes, only have to go in for one surgery. That's our goal. Is we don't want to have to go back in for what we call a re-excision or a take back, where we find out a week later to say, all right, you have positive margins. You need to go back for another surgery, right? But just because we believe that, we need to be able to reach out to the market with our branding. That was a huge focus, and it still is it's one thing to be a technology, but it's another thing to how does that technology affect the patient, the healthcare system, the physician? What's the story that goes with it? There's a lot of great, med tech tools out there, companies out there, but they don't speak to people about how they really solve a problem. So we took on a whole new branding effort where we've gone out to the market, done a ton of asking to physicians, patients, current executives in our company, and did a massive rebranding. We're very close. We're not there yet to launch our new campaign. Then you have to build out the whole commercial infrastructure. When you build out a sales team, sales teams need tools to be successful in the field. Questions are going to come up, objections. How do you defend your pricing? How do you defend all these different things? We have to do the research to make sure that our teams are successful in the field and that we ultimately can bring this technology to the patients and that the hospitals see the value. So it's a lot of research. It takes a lot of time. There's a lot of expense that goes behind it, but I'm a big believer that if we don't get it right holistically from the beginning, we'll never be able to scale to the size that we want to be.
I think that is so critical, and it's a key step that so many organizations either skip altogether or try to do on the cheap, right? So they are going to maybe do some market research, but we don't really have time to interview enough customers, and so we just interview a couple because it's faster, and we're like, okay, that data set of 3 is enough. Let's go. And it's so tempting to want to just skip those key steps because we feel like there's this window of opportunity and we've got to get into the market and seize the day, right? Seize that market share right now. So kudos to you guys for making that investment in both time and money.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we've got a great board of our board. We've got a great leadership team. We've done a great job with a capital raise, and it's put us into a place. A lot of people believe our story. They know what we're going after, and we know we're trying to do this the right way. So they believe in us, and they've given us, the resources to go out and do this the right way, so that if we're going to fail, let's fail fast. Let's pick it up and let's pivot real quick, right? But let's make sure that we did this correctly, so we build the foundation.
Yeah. So, is there anything that you've learned so far in the market research that has been enlightening, some kind of aha?
Yeah, I think it was a lot, sometimes a lot of this market research kind of validates the way you feel internally, right? Like you thought you had a gut feeling, you know what I mean? But you're like, let's validate this to make sure we're right. And which feels good sometimes to know that, like, okay, I'm not taking crazy pills. We're onto something here, and you get that validation. So that's always good. But I think a lot of it is just the way healthcare is looked at right now. It's so funny is everyone wants to innovate. Everyone wants these great tools, but a lot of the times we keep hearing from the payers or the hospital, they don't want to pay for it, right? Everyone wants the best care out there, but they don't want to pay for it. Right. So for us, it was really trying to put together like what we believe we can do from a clinical standpoint, but the emotion of these patients too. There's so much that goes on with this disease state, especially with breast cancer and like some of the early things that we're doing. We're going to be looking at other tissue types for other cancers, liver, head, neck, kidney, but a lot of the studies in our randomized control trial will be around breast cancer because that's a really unmet need right now. But these patients go through a huge emotional side to these surgeries, what it does to them after surgery, emotionally, physically, their own feeling about themselves, sexuality, all these different things. And we knew that like we have to show the market in these patients that like we have a great device that if we can help just cut this down 50% of the time, these patients don't have to go back. Like that's huge to what it does. So just knowing the emotional side of what this technology can do. And I think that was really touching for a lot of this. We went through the brand briefing with our creative team to see they were doing a lot of research on blogs and different places that patients were hanging out, and just that emotional connection to what a technology like this can do was really enlightening. It also, it makes you work harder to know that you can do something great out there for these patients.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So I think it's also really common what you guys are experiencing too, where you've got maybe it's a company that's led by an engineer or led by a technologist. And so that it becomes a product first company and then has to make that shift in order to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's but if you have a good team put together that understand, you've got to have your team that's building it, getting all that right, and then you got to have your team that commercializes it too, right? Yeah. We always joke there's always that internal battle sometimes, and you have to figure out a way. Well, how are we all going to win together? So I think a lot of people go through that, and it's part of a growing organization as well that makes this big shift. It's happened before, and it can be successful. You just have to have good teammates and good leadership to help you through that.
Yeah. So you mentioned leadership. So as you think about, your role as the chief commercial officer and the responsibility that you have, how does leadership play a role in the commercial success?
Yeah. It's everything, right? I mean, from the people, I'm a huge believer in the talent we bring in the organization. I always say, I want to bring people in that are better than me. I want to be challenged every day to always bring better people in the organization because it helps me grow. And if we don't bring in good people into the organization on the commercial side, we're never going to grow. So leadership is important. We have to get uncomfortable every day. We have to push ourselves. We have to be relentless on always trying to be better. And if we mess up, that's okay. Let's pick it up and pivot real quick. It's all about people, though. I can't tell you how many times throughout my career in different roles I've had, and even coming here, the better people you bring into the organization, the more time, resources, whatever it is to find better talent to bring in will make your job so much easier. And I see a lot of the times that people don't take the time to really vet the people they're going to bring in the organization or hire correctly. A bad hire can really set you back. And it happens. We're not perfect. I've made a lot of bad hires in the past, and that's okay. We all learn from it.
Yep.
But like a small company, if you don't really invest in your people, you will not scale at the growth rate that we know we can.
So how is that experience different for you in this COVID climate? When you think about finding talent in a virtual world, right? You're probably not doing face-to-face interviews.
Yeah.
And then, just even the team that's in the field.
Yeah.
And being able to lead effectively a virtual team or remote team.
Yeah, I think it's the way that you communicate, obviously the way that you onboard, the way that you bring people in. Yeah, it's been like, listen, I still haven't met a lot of my coworkers that are up in Toronto. We've only met over, Google or Zoom or whatever it may be. You can't go out and have dinner or have a glass of wine and get to know people on a level to say, okay, we worked so hard during the day. Tell me about your family, all that. You try and, you can do it over Zoom or whatever these interactions may be, but you just have to be upfront with people and ask more questions. It's sometimes through the camera, it's hard to read people's, nonverbal communication. If you're in a meeting with someone and something isn't going right, you're like, all right, let's talk about it. Clearly, we're not all on the same page here. So I think you just have to be more patient with it, and it takes more time. And then on the interviewing side, it's a little bit more due diligence on your side, obviously trying to understand this person's network. Do they know someone that do a little bit more fact finding? We're just at the point where we're finally starting to come out of our COVID bubble as an organization. I'm starting to travel a little bit more because we feel that we're just at that point, and obviously with vaccinations rising, and we feel it's in the right places where we can travel. The one thing also that COVID has done though is it's humanized the workplace. And I make this joke all the time is that we all used to, even in, we used to have meetings or whatever it is, and everyone's all buttoned up and everything. And now, someone's kid run across the screen, or, my daughter will run in and say, Daddy, I want a snack. You can't turn that off. That's life. And we're all,
right.
Parents, whatever your situation is, we can't get away from that. And it's kind of humanized people where you're like, you're not just your role is whatever your title is, whatever your mom or your daddy or whatever you might be to someone. So I think it's kind of cool. And I think it's about like a little bit of human element back to the workplace.
Yeah. Like authenticity and transparency. Like we are a human being with multiple roles, but that we're not having to maybe silo, and maybe it's because we can't. Those boundaries aren't as clear and cut anymore. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's interesting. So our company's been virtual from day one. So for 11 years, we've been functioning virtual. So in a lot of ways for us, it's business as usual, but it is very different. I mean, we've got clients that we've worked with that we've never met in person. And we've worked with them for years. Yeah. And this was way before COVID. So it's just different. And you're right. So when you're having that communication through Zoom, through web conferencing tools, like we're, using now, I say like everybody needs to have their camera on. Nobody wants to talk to the black box with someone's name. You can't see those nonverbal communication. You don't know whether they like it, whether they don't like it, whether they're checking their email.
Exactly. And it's also, I've worked for organizations where I've been on one coast and had national responsibility. So I've had to fly across the whole country, get in the car, drive for 90 minutes, and then sit in an all-day meeting one day and then fly home or something. Like that's nice that that's gone away too. It's just like, I think it's been a big learning on like, obviously our travel and expense policies are down, everything. We're spending resources in different ways maybe, but I think it also has made us more efficient.
Well, yeah, you've got all those conferences and travel resources that you can invest in branding projects.
Absolutely. And that's been a really cool part of this too, on the commercialization efforts. We've spent a lot of time and resources. We're very excited about where we're going from our branding resources, and also from the way that we virtually have meetings with physicians, wherever it may be. I was on a meeting earlier with a physician going through a presentation, kind of showing our software, whatever it may be. And we were able to do it really good over the phone. And then it saved all of us getting together for a meeting, whatever it may be. It's like, if we're both serious, we want to engage, we'll set up that next meeting or whatever that may be, but we can get it out over the phone or over the computer, say like, are we both engaged? We want to move forward versus just like, let's meet to meet.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So talk about that a little bit. What are some of the strategies that you're applying that have worked really well? And maybe even candidly, some of the things that you guys are still struggling with when it comes to engaging your customers and being able to present your offer to those prospects in a virtual world.
Yeah, so the nights in that we're doing right now, we're heavily investing in our sales tools and everything as we're going to build out this commercial team. We're underway with interviews and we're building up a whole sales force and commercial team right now, which is a challenge of its own. But we're working heavily with our creative agency to say, okay, there's a litany of things we can do, right, with all the different virtual tools, and even just, from deploying iPads in the field to the way that our sales team will ultimately have. You don't get a lot of time with physicians. Physicians are very busy. They're very patient focused. So either to get them on the phone or in front of the computer, or if a sales rep gets 90 seconds with them, we want to be impactful. And we really only want to work with people in the early stages of where we are. We have more of a sniper approach than a shotgun approach. Our technology is very specific. It's not going to be for everyone in the day.
Yeah.
In day one, it's a new type of modality for breast cancer. OCT has been widely used in ophthalmology, dermatology, but it's never been used in breast cancer surgery. So the early adopters, we need to be ones that want to understand how it works, learn it. And then over time, when we build out our artificial intelligence platform and get FDA approval, we hope in the next year and a half, it will go to more of the mainstream. But why I tell you all that is the tools that we need to really deploy right now, we need to be specific. We're an imaging modality. So we need to be able to show either these videos, correlations to different types of cancer or histology, or all these things that resonate with these physicians that say, okay, I get it. I know why you guys are doing this and why you went down this road. And it will click really quick for them, but it's big for us to have the right visual identity for them to understand exactly what we do. We know the pain points. We know the problem they have. We want to show them right away and say, yes, guys, that is the pain I have. How can you fix this for me? So I think there's a lot of different tools, like I said, from things you do visually through a presentation to when you get in front of people, showing them right to the problem and understanding it, what their pain is, and then saying this is the solution. So I hope that made sense where I was coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned early adopters. How do you in your team identify the early adopters?
Yeah, a lot of us have been in this, this industry or this kind of subset of med tech for a number of years. So we kind of know who the big players are, but we have kind of, a slew of questions. Ultimately, our technology is very similar in ways to ultrasound. So when we look for early adopters, one of our big questions is, do you read ultrasound? Can you do ultrasound? If they say yes or no, it kind of takes us down a whole different pathway of questions. So we can correlate it too. So being okay, and honestly, you have to tell the tough questions. Like, if we feel that when we have a conversation with a physician or whatever it may be, if they're really going to struggle with the technology, they might not be a good early adopter. And we have to ask those questions. Are you willing to put in the time early to learn this? Like, if you don't have a great case, are you going to be discouraged? And I think, like I talked about earlier, you have to get uncomfortable with asking. You have to be comfortable with getting uncomfortable, I should say, to ask tough questions. And it's okay if someone says no, to say, let's talk again in a year. That's okay. But right now, where we are as a company, where this technology is, if you're not the best early fit, we'll come to you later. Or if something changes in your practice. So I think it's important. You have to know your market. You have to know how to target them. Once you get in front of them, you have to ask the right questions.
So I want to just pause right there because I think that is so powerful. I hope everyone hits rewind and listens to that last 20-second clip again, because it's so powerful that not every customer that says yes is the ideal customer. And it could actually put you down the wrong path instead of on the path to success. And so being willing to say, you're not the right customer for us right now. It doesn't mean that you won't be, like you said, in a year, but that, to me, that kind of strategic questioning and decision making in the sales process really helps you get those early adopters that are going to become raving fans, that are going to be the ones that help spread the word on how amazing your solution is. And if you end up getting a bunch of folks on there that say yes, and then everybody's excited because you want a new customer, but they're not the ones that are going to be raving fans, it can do so much harm.
Absolutely. Like, early top line revenue is great. It excites everyone. But if they fall out the back door in 3 to 4 months, we just spend a bunch of time and money onboarding them. Maybe they don't say something that favorable to their colleagues. It's going to hurt you in the long run. So you have you obviously have to play the long game on this. Obviously, everyone wants to accelerate. You want money in the door now. Luckily, we've got, like I said, a great board, great leadership, and great kind of investors that are believing in our story that are going to give us the opportunity to do this right. So we're very lucky we have that.
Yeah, yeah. So Steve, you had mentioned something about educating the market.
Yeah.
And how important that is. So when we're talking about an innovation that's really revolutionary or breakthrough, or maybe not completely disruptive, but new for this particular market segment that you're pursuing, tell me about this education initiative or campaign that you have going on, and why is that so critical?
Oh, it's huge for us. It's a big part, and it was one of the things when I came in and took on this role, as I saw as a whole, and that's not a bad thing. It was just a call out, right, to say, listen, like, we have something really great that we can bring here, but you're changing the way people think, and physicians don't like change, and they'll admit that themselves. So we have to give the right resources, whether it be the education that we do by bringing the right resources on site when they're learning this, whether it's our online platform, whether it's a learning and development program, all these different things to teach these physicians the right way and their staff how to read OCT. Or again, it goes back to that question, who are the early targets, the ones that are going to pick this up faster. So I think we have to constantly listen. We get a ton of feedback from people with a lot of our key opinion leaders. They'll say, we don't like this, or this doesn't make sense, or this and that. And we take that feedback and we say, okay, like, let's go back to the drawing board and let's update this. You don't like this, you don't like that, or help us. Like, you can't build these products in a vacuum. And a lot of the time that happens where everyone gets going to think you have the greatest product and you didn't test it in the field. You didn't get feedback from the people that are ultimately going to be the ones using it, are asking their institutions to spend money on it. So if you don't listen to that feedback, you're kind of crazy, because you have to learn. Obviously, companies do things in a certain way they do for revenue and margins and all that. But if your actual users aren't going to adopt it, then you need to pivot. So there's a million different ways you can give education, and but ultimately it's a huge part of what we're doing, and it's very important to us. So it's going to keep evolving in whatever format we deliver it in.
Yeah. And I think what you're talking about too is, and I want to just clarify for everyone here, is that there's a difference between educating the market on your particular solution and educating the market on how to use something versus trying to educate them on a problem that they don't know that they have, right? And those are two different things, because so many times where I hear when I'm working with clients is that they have a market that doesn't know they have a problem. Yeah. And I say, well, no, that's a problem for your business. Yeah. And so, can we go out and find the market that knows they have a problem instead of the ones that we need to educate and kind of arm twist and convince them that they have a problem that's worth solving. So just want to make sure that I'm delineating that for the folks that are listening today.
Yeah, no, that's a great call out. And luckily, in this role I'm in now, the market knows there's a problem. These surgeons will first tell you they want to reduce their takebacks rates. Yeah. They don't want to have to call those patients and say, hey, we need to do another surgery on you because a week later we got the pathology results. You had a positive margin, whatever, in any tissue that we scan. So luckily we have that. And from here, it's educating them on ultimately this type of technology, and then ultimately like how to use it. So there's a lot of different types of education. You're completely right on that.
So Steve, as you kind of think back, your role now, but even before, and you kind of just think back of some of your successes along the way in your career, what do you think are some of the most important decisions that, a commercial officer is making in this process?
Yeah, I think, I've taken on different roles, obviously come up through sales leadership and then moved into full commercial roles. So I think some of the biggest decisions you could make is you have to learn a little bit of everything, right? So under a kind of that commercial umbrella, you've got sales, you've got marketing, you work with the R&D team, you work with your clinical team, obviously in the med tech world, our regulatory team, what we can say, we can't say. And I think it's really important when you sit through some of these like different leadership meetings, whatever, the setup of your company is, you have to kind of understand a little bit of everything, right? You have to obviously be like, own sales and marketing or whatever kind of that scope for your role is. But if you don't understand the pain of like what the engineers go through or what the regulatory team or all these to kind of put that together when you sit in a room together, you can't just say, well, all I care about is sales or marketing. It's like, great, but everything sales and marketing does they still the people behind the scenes that touch that. So I think if you have to take an interest in some of your colleagues and other fellow leaders in your organization to understand what they go through, and then you become more dangerous in yourself and the better, leader yourself when you can understand some of the things they go through. So I think, again, it's just understanding the whole play of not just like the customer facing stuff that you're working on so hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's what happens behind the scenes to even get the product out the door. And I think that makes you a lot more desirable in the market as yourself and a better leader.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so powerful because, when you can create that unity, then you can be much more powerful,
Exactly.
dominating the market and winning market share instead of
Absolutely.
fighting each other internally.
Exactly. And like, listen, there's, we always used to joke, sales and marketing always butt heads, and then marketing and R&D always butt heads, right? So there's always just like this downflow. But at the end of the day, if you all have the same goal to make your company successful, whatever your mission is, for us is to treat these patients, then you ultimately win. So again, it comes back to the people. Having the right people throughout the organization just makes it much easier and more fun.
Yeah. Fun. Key. Fun.
Yeah. We all have our weeks, right? Like, we still have to have fun doing this. Like, I speak with my colleagues all the time. It's like, did you look back? Did you have a fun week? Like, did you have fun? Did we have some tough meetings? At the end of the day, are you like, I'm drained, but did you ultimately have fun? If you didn't have fun, then you need to think about it, because this should be fun.
Right. Yeah. It's such a crazy career path, to be in a startup company and to be, bringing an innovation to market, that you definitely have to have some fun along the way.
Yeah.
Otherwise you just burn out so fast.
So fast. And especially we talk a lot about, obviously, when, we're doing this COVID environment, I think burnout can happen so much quicker, because for a lot of people, like, I am starting to travel again. I'm starting to get out. So I'm starting to get a little bit of like the feel of what life was like beforehand. But if like you haven't left your house for a year and then you're constantly working, or you leave your office, you're in your kitchen or whatever, it's never ending, right? So you got to go take a walk around the block, get out, like, do whatever you can do to kind of separate it. Because I think people will burn out really quickly right now.
Yeah, definitely. So what are some of the challenges that you guys are facing? We're in 2021. We've got a few months behind us now.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you guys are having to overcome in this year?
Yeah. So some of the biggest thing, a lot of it is still, we're in a really good place from a fundraising standpoint. We've done really well. We had a bunch of warrants exercised, so that brought in a lot of funding. We're going to go to a big capital raise. So our investor relation team is doing a fantastic job on raising capital. So we're really lucky that we can say that. I would still say, but site access, like, we're about to launch a really big randomized control trial to help prove out our artificial intelligent, machine learning algorithm, which is going to be a game changer for us. But we're still having some issues getting into some sites. The COVID environment, obviously, there's a big part of doing trials where you have to go on site and do site walks and check off on things. Some sites are still not letting us in. They want to do all this virtually. So I think access is still a big issue with COVID. Obviously, we're seeing people get vaccinated more, and in some states are obviously harder getting to than others, and some have been more relaxed. I think just this COVID world is still kind of a lot of instability in the market. Of people just, do we want, vendors or suppliers coming into the hospital, whatever it may be. So that's something that we still have to work through. Other than that, like you said, we're about to do a big onslaught of ramping up hiring. That's going to be interesting coming into this year, obviously, where we conduct interviews and things like that. And it's up to how comfortable people are meeting face to face. But honestly, I'm excited for this year. This has been a great time. We're about to see all those heavy hours of branding efforts take off in the next few months. We're really excited to launch the new campaign. So it's been, for us, it's actually kind of been like head in the sand for the last 6 months, work. And then finally, in the next few months, you'll start seeing all this stuff. And like, okay, like, we really moved the needle.
Yeah. Start to see some of the fruit of your labor.
Yeah, exactly. And that's big, because that really starts, because then people start looking at us in a different way. They're like, wow, this company's really moving. They're doing things. They've really kind of pushed it. And I think that creates a lot of buzz. And we're already starting to see that, some inbound leads starting to come in. People already hearing some of the things we're doing, and that's happened organically through some of our other things. And that's exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So as we wrap up here, is there anything else that you would want to share with our audience who might be at various places or stages of the commercialization process? Yeah,
I would say just, take a deep breath sometimes. I think everyone wants everything to be so perfect. It's not going to be perfect. There are things, and I'm a type A guy myself. So there are times where I'm like, it's never going to be right. It's never going to be perfect. But if you don't just jump at some point, you'll never know. And it's okay to fail. I would say I've failed a lot in my career, and I actually don't have an issue with it because it has made me the person I am today. And I think if we're not willing to try different things, to change things up, and also just because things are going great, don't just like sit back, push the needle, think about changing things up. Think about like, how do we get, from good, better, best, right? Like, how do we keep going? So I think always be ready to innovate, always be ready to push yourself harder. And, again, I think the biggest thing, if I can embark or put it on anyone that's listening, is think about the people you have in your organization. Like, keep trying to get better and better and better, because like that will make your whole journey on commercialization and everything else. Keep bringing good talent into the organization, and the better people you put around you or in the field or whatever role they may be, like you will do better. So don't be afraid to shake things up.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, continuous improvement. And as someone like yourself in the role that you have, just managing this strategy development process, because it's going to continue to evolve and continue to change, and being able to manage that, being able to bring people alongside with you in that process, as you just continue to evolve as the market changes and you become in a different phase within that commercialization process.
Exactly. And you're so right. I think, we sit back all the time and go, okay, like what we look like today might look different in 90 days, might look different in 6 months, in a year. And that's okay. And we've been very open to that. Is we're going to learn a lot. Like we've done a lot of early market testing, but when you go to a full scale launch, we think we have it dialed in, but something might come out of the blue, and that's okay. We're okay to say, all right, let's not be so set on the ways we have it now. Like the market is going to give us the feedback. And we need to be able to either, pivot with that or change up our offerings, whatever it may be. And I think that's the fun part also of being one of the smaller players, is hopefully you keep moving faster than, some of the bigger organizations that's like moving the Titanic. And that's the fun part.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely the small guy advantage.
Yeah.
Fast and nimble.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, how do folks get a hold of you if anybody wants to follow up with you after the show?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can reach out to us through info@perimetermed.com. So it's just info@perimetermed.com. So, or we're perimetermed.com is our website. So again, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you so much. Loved having you. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. I know you're busy working to bring your life-changing innovation to market, and I value your time and attention. To get the latest episodes on your mobile device automatically, subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate everyone who shared the show with friends and colleagues. See you on the next episode of Health Innovators.